Sounds good to me.
What the what? Tip me $1 saying, I'm a big fan of your content. I feel like you're my only friend. Well, just so you know, to clarify, I'm not your personal friend. I don't know who you are. However, I understand that some people may feel like they have a connection to me via a kinship as gamers or as people, because I share stuff with you guys every day and you know about the stuff I go through. Maybe you find a little bit of kind of association with that. Maybe you've been through some of that stuff yourself, and I appreciate the support and I appreciate the sentiment. However, understand I'm not really your close friend. That's not a good thing to say. Let's be realistic here. There you go.
By the way, Sunspot, the problem is, or he could be honest, that's assuming Phil even knows what honesty is.
That's right, true. Which he doesn't. I mean, that is such a foreign concept to him.
Yeah, it's much easier to lie than tell the truth.
And I don't think that he's a pathological liar, or at least I don't want to play armchair psychologist and operate under the presumption that he's a pathological liar, because I don't understand fully whether or not that is part of his pathology. But he is a compulsive liar. He feels a compulsion to lie. And if I had to play armchair psychologist, I would say that stems from his childhood. That is something that just became ingrained in him from early youth, where I don't think he got away with lies. I think he was the type of child that was scolded for minor things and didn't want to get in trouble for it, so he felt the need to lie. Now, if he had just told the truth when he was a kid, and like, yes, I broke the lamp, or, you know, yes, I did steal the cookies, or I ate the entire box of cereal, or whatever it is that he did wrong, you know, something that kids do, it ultimately would have worked out better for him. But I think that he is so fearful of the truth, and I do apologize if you guys hear that in the background. That's my phone ringing. I'm going to try to reach over and turn it off here in a second. I do think that he is so fearful of what reception he'll receive from the truth that he feels this need to lie. It's instinctual to him. It's a survival mechanism for him. And I will be right back. I'm going to mute this. I got to turn that off. Otherwise,
I'd like to. Here's the thing. I have played armchair psychologist with Phil before, and I've come to the point where I do believe this man has severe, almost crippling social anxiety. Given the fact that from everything that has been said about him from conventions, John Rambo, he didn't talk to people, and he felt uncomfortable there. B, the fact that he never leaves the house and only does so for matters of utmost urgency, like the Liana thing, and the fact that he just does not know how to communicate with other people, hence how he talks to his chat, the fact that he doesn't engage with his chat when he chats on different topics. I've come to believe this man has severe crippling social anxiety because of those reasons.
I can agree with that. Well, especially with leaving the house, unless it's unless it's urgent, he can't leave the house without Kat or without somebody, I should say.
It was the same. It was the same with John Rambo. Yeah, it was the same with Howard and John Rambo. Yeah. When he went to a good example, when he went to E3, who the fuck did he bring along with him?
He brought John.
Exactly. John went everywhere with him. Phil needs that. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm legitimately not saying it's a bad thing for someone who does have social anxiety. Because I'm the same way in some cases. I do have social anxiety, even though, you know, somehow I'm able to talk on podcasts and, like, be open about all that shit. That's because I've learned to deal with it.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with having someone as a support mechanism. There's nothing wrong with that. But Phil has enclosed himself so much that he is dependent on it.
That's true. But also you're not running around calling people mentally ill either.
No, because I know that I am, and I'd be a massive fucking hypocrite if I did call anybody else it.
That's one thing I think that Phil doesn't understand is, and it's something that I'm actually not going to fault him for this, because it's something that society as a whole stigmatizes. And I promise I will not get political here, although I would love to cite some political examples. But when people talk about mental illness, they operate under the presumption that mental illness somehow is an equivocation to bad. Oh, that person's a bad person because they're mentally ill. They all of a sudden manifest in their mind thoughts of craziness or psychopathy or sociopathy. They don't think of mental illness and immediately default to PTSD or clinical depression or manic depression.
Or social anxiety.
Right, or social anxiety, or someone with crippling phobias like agoraphobia.
Arachnophobia.
Arachnophobia, yeah. In Agent Proper's, in my case, cobraphobia. They don't think about those things. They think about the psychopaths, the sociopaths, the neurotics, the schizophrenics, the people that can do them harm. And they clump everyone else in to that one little microcosm of mental illness. When mental illness is, if it were taken at face value, just that, an illness of the mind. Just like we have illnesses of the body, you don't look at someone with cancer and go, oh God, get away from me, you have the cancer, you're evil. You're like, oh, poor person has cancer, let's help take care of it. And if we were to look at mental illness in the same form and fashion that we look at physical illnesses, then we wouldn't have these social stigmas that currently plague those that suffer from mental illnesses. So I agree with you. I don't blame Phil for acting the way he does in certain regards because he has social anxiety disorder, which I agree with you. I think it's very self-evident. What I do have a problem with is that he then denigrates other people by calling them mentally ill and further perpetuates the stigma that mental illness is in and of itself equal to bad.
And I also think
because that's how he's using it. He's using it as a pejorative.
It's not just that, he's using it as a blanket statement, which is one of the problems with just blanketing everything as a mental illness. Is mental illness in of itself is a blanket statement. And that's one of the worst things. When someone like, well, if you didn't want to get political, but let's say something does happen and they say, oh, it's because of mental illness. The problem is they're using such a broad blanket statement. They need to be in the specifics that, oh, this man clearly had schizophrenia or multiple personality disorder. They need to get into the specifics. We can't use the blanket statement of mental illness anymore because it does encapsulate so goddamn much. But the thing is Phil calling everybody mental illness is because because of his social anxiety, never learned how to communicate with people properly.
And wouldn't that come from the lack of understanding and because we're afraid of the unknown? That's why that stigma still perpetuates itself. And Phil, by proxy, is only passing it along because even if Phil identified with even some of the symptoms, well, I don't want to be demonized, so I'll demonize you instead, or I'll demonize all of you.
You're giving Phil way too much credit there. You are giving Phil way too much credit. Yeah.
No, I agree with GTG. I think that I don't want to be demonized, so let me get the first shot in. I think it's a preemptive strike. I think it's Bush's shock and awe that I'm going to call you mentally ill before you point out that I have a mental illness.
I honestly think, and I might be a bit of a bastard by saying this, but I honestly think you're giving Phil a bit too much credit for thinking that way. I just think it comes down to a straightforward situation where Phil grew up, didn't have many friends, so wasn't able to brush up on his communication skills in society or in general, because he has his social anxiety, so he didn't socialize, so he didn't know what social cues work here and there and what isn't acceptable socially. Like, I mean, for God's sake, him using, let's look at his pattern of behavior saying, oh, I am the last remaining Nazi and I must kill all of the space Jews. Like, him saying all of that, him turning around calling everybody mental ill, him turning around and saying all of this other bullshit is, to me, because he never, ever learned about social cues and what is socially acceptable, because he has such social anxiety that he never got out and learned these.
Wait. Okay, I feel what you're coming from. I do. I get what you're saying, but at the same time, We're talking about an individual, because of his social anxiety, because he doesn't interact with other people, he can only go off what he sees. So with that being said, if he sees people interacting in such a way, right, that even if he doesn't understand it, he's looking at these social cues and being like, okay, these guys are ridiculing this guy right here. I don't want to be that guy who's being ridiculed. I want to be part of the group instead of being on the other end of that. And then he just goes with it. Now, don't get me wrong. I can understand why you would think I'd give credit. And I hate doing that. At the same time, he's not the moron that he pegs himself for. Especially in an environment where he's been able to manipulate people for over a decade. You don't get that way for no reason. You don't just wake up one morning and start doing that. That's something that he has developed over time. And all of it, well, most of it, is developed as a defense mechanism in some ways. But I don't think it's too far of a stretch that Phil can identify issues or problems within himself and use and blame other people to hide it. This is what Phil does. He hides anything and everything from people. And he doesn't want to be ridiculed. He doesn't want to have to answer the hard questions, if you will. We've talked about this briefly. So it would, I mean, to me anyway, it only makes sense that he would try to turn the table on someone before they get him. Like you said earlier, it's a survival mechanism. Get them before they get me.
All right, I can see your point. I can see your point.
Now being somewhat of the moderator of this stream, before we end it, I would say that I agree with both sides of this argument here, and it's kind of gonna hit right in the middle for me. A lot of the stuff Phil does is him copying from other people. That's why he does the memes. That's why he tries to bring up Detractor memes and make them into his emotes, because he wants that cash from it.
Agent, so, just to add on to what they're saying, that's actually one of the techniques they actually treat people with severe autism to do. They teach them to copy social cues. Like, because they don't fully understand them, they teach them to copy them.
But Phil is too uncomfortable to go ahead and get out and try to practice at copying. That's why he's sitting here in this hug box in his controlled environment where he has the say and he has the power because it makes him feel comfortable. That's why he doesn't want to come back to YouTube if he gets banned again, because he knows he's dead in the water. Same thing with Bixer now. He's dead in the water. He goes anywhere else but Twitch, he can't compete and he can't take that L.